Yo, what's going on everyone? It's me, it's Jinsula. I hope you're having a good day and welcome to today's Pokemon Go video. Today we're going to be looking at the top Pokemon of every single type, and something you do need to keep in mind is that this is not going to be a top DPS Pokemon video or a top PvP Pokemon video. Those lists are always going to vary, but this video is specifically for what I believe are the absolute best Pokemon of each and every type, specifically when it comes to PvE content. There's going to be a very heavy emphasis on what Pokemon is going to be more useful compared to others, and there's going to be some that are going to be notable surprises. Now, I did make a video like this in the past, but ever since that video, we of course had a bunch of Pokemon get released into Pokemon Go. So because of that, this video is going to be way different from those previous videos, and I really do think you should use this as your most up-to-date guide. And before we get into the absolute best Pokemon, if you end up enjoying this video and found it to be helpful, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit that notification bell as well. Alright, so with that said, let's get into the absolute best Pokemon, starting off with bug types. Now when it comes to the bug types, there's going to be a bunch of them that are going to be Mega Evolutions, but there's one that definitely stands out, and that is going to be Mega Heracross. Mega Heracross, as of right now, is the #1 bug type Pokemon in the game, but if you do not have the Mega Energy to Mega Evolve this Pokemon, then you should also consider Mega Pinsir. That has always been the best Pokemon until Mega Heracross, but I would say that Mega Heracross is definitely going to be favorable among the two. Now, among non-Mega Evolutions, we of course have Volcarona coming in at number 3. That is the absolute best bug-type Pokemon in the game that is not a Mega Evolution or a Shadow Pokemon. Now coming in at number 4 and 5 on this list, it is going to be 2 Mega Evolutions. We have Mega Beedrill and then Mega Scizor, both with bug-type attacks. And then finally at number 6, which is going to be a non-Mega Pokemon, that is going to be Pheromosa. That is a very powerful bug-type Pokemon, and if you do not have a good one, you should look to get one as soon as possible. Alright, next up, let's get into the dark types. And of course, the #1 dark type in the game right now is going to be Mega Tyranitar with Bite and Brutal Swing. Ever since Tyranitar got Brutal Swing, it basically became the absolute best dark type in the game. And the shadow version of it is going to be the #2 Pokemon. And then at number 3, we got another Mega Evolution, which is going to be Mega Houndoom. And then at number 4, we of course have regular Tyranitar with Bite and Brutal Swing. And then at number 5, we have what used to be the #1 dark type Pokemon, and that's going to be Hydreigon with Bite and Brutal Swing. Now, if that Pokemon were to ever get a Shadow version, it would still pale in comparison to Shadow Tyranitar. That's something you should keep in mind. And then finally, at number 6, we got another Mega Evolution, which is going to be Mega Gyarados with Bite and Crunch. Next up, let's move on to the dragon types, and of course at the very top we have Mega Rayquaza. That's going to remain unchanged for a very long time, probably forever, because Mega Rayquaza is one of the top Mega Evolutions in the game, and of course Mega Rayquaza is just such a hard hitter when it comes to dragon types. But number 2, we of course have Mega Garchomp. That is a very powerful second option. But at number 3, we got a brand new entry, and that is going to be Origin Form Palkia. This Pokemon is incredibly powerful, especially when it comes to raid damage, and if you happen to have yourself a 100% IV with Spatial Ren, congratulations, you got yourself the absolute best non-Mega Dragon-type Pokemon in the game. And then at number 4, we have Mega Salamence. A lot of people think of this Pokemon as the best non-legendary Mega Evolution when it comes to Dragon types, but in reality, it does fall a little bit behind Shadow Garchomp. And then finally, at number 6, we of course have Mega Latios. That is a very powerful Mega Evolution. It's another Mega Legendary Evolution. And of course, the one thing it does have going for it is a very powerful Dragon-type move combination, which is Dragon Claw and Dragon Breath. Alright, next let's move on to the top electric types, and this list is very straightforward. It's going to see Shadow Raikou at the very top. That is by far the absolute best electric type Pokemon in the game. It even beats out Mega Evolutions. But at number 2, we have Xurkitree. That is an Ultra Beast that has proven to be one of the best Pokemon in the game. And then at number 3, we have Zekrom, which is a very powerful electric type Pokemon, and it has the added benefit of also being a dragon type, so it has a lot more resistances compared to your typical electric types. And then we have our first Mega Evolution coming in at number 4, and that's going to be Mega Manectric. When it comes to Mega Evolutions with an electric typing, that's going to be the preferred one by far, and if you do not have one ready to go, then you should definitely invest in getting one right away. And then we have Shadow Electivire as our number 5 pick. That is a very powerful Pokemon and very hard hitting, and it also has some tanky stats as well, so it should last longer in battle compared to other Shadow Pokemon. And then finally at number 6, we have Shadow Zapdos. Alright, next up, let's move on to the fairy types. At number 1, we of course have Mega Gardevoir. That is going to be unchanged for a very long time. And then at number 2, we have Mega Diancie. I would say that between these two Mega Evolutions, Mega Gardevoir is going to be a lot more favorable, and the reason for that is because it does have a fairy type fast attack, which is not going to be common among all the top fairy types. And then at number 3, we have Tapu Lele, which is going to be really powerful now as a fairy type raid attacker, mainly because of Nature's Madness. And then at number 4, we have another Tapu Pokemon, Tapu Koko, which is also going to be really powerful because of Nature's Madness. But at number 5, we have one of the new legendaries that debuted this year, and that is going to be the incarnate form of Enamorus. Eventually in the future, we might get the Terrian form of this Pokemon, and I do predict that is going to be more powerful. And then at number 6, we got Tapu Bulu with Nature's Madness. That is another very powerful fairy type. Now, you may have noticed that there's a bunch of Tapu Pokemon now in the list for the top fairy types, even though they do not have a fast fairy type attack. The reason why they are on this list is because of Nature's Madness. That is a very powerful move, and it is what makes these Pokemon the top fairy type attackers. So you definitely should invest into them if you have the move Nature's Madness. That is a very powerful fairy type charge attack, and you do not want to discount it. Next up, let's move on to the fighting types, and yes, this list is definitely different from before. At the very top, we of course have Mega Lucario. Now, in my original video, I stated that when Mega Lucario comes out, it is by far going to be the absolute best fighting type, and that is definitely true. But at number 2, I actually have a Pokemon that is about to be released, and it's currently not in Pokemon GO, but it is going to be Shadow Conkeldurr. That is going to be the top non-Mega fighting type in the game by far, and if you are able to get a 100% IV, you should definitely invest into it. It's basically going to melt down every single gym that has Blissey's, Snorlax's, and Chanseys, and then of course if there's a raid boss that is weak against fighting types, you will definitely want to make sure you have this Pokemon. Now coming in at number 3 for fighting types, we of course have another brand new Mega Evolution from this year, and that is going to be Mega Heracross. Mega Heracross is one of those Pokemon that has a lot of versatility. You could use it as a top bug type, or you could use it as a top fighting type. But really, it's going to pale in comparison to Mega Lucario. That is going to be by far the best fighting type in the game. But number 4, we have what used to be the number 1 fighting type, and that is going to be Mega Blaziken. Mega Blaziken is a top DPS Pokemon, bar none. But unfortunately, it is also quite squishy as well. It's one of the strongest glass cannons in the game, which means you will get a lot of DPS out of it, but it will get knocked out really quickly. So do keep that in mind if you ever decide to use it. And then at number 5, we have the classic top tier fighting type, and that is going to be Terrakion with Double Kick and Sacred Sword. That Pokemon is always going to be one of the best fighting types in the game. And then of course, we have Keldeo with Low Kick and Sacred Sword, another very powerful fighting type. Alright, next let's move on to the fire types, and this list is pretty much the exact same as before. We have Mega Blaziken at the very top with Fire Spin and Blast Burn, and then we have Mega Charizard Y with Fire Spin and Blast Burn, and then of course we got Reshiram with Fire Fang and Fusion Flare, then Shadow Darmanitan with Overheat, and then of course Mega Charizard X, and then we have Shadow Entei, which is kind of a new entry, although it's been in the game for a very long time, but recently it was in Shadow Raid, so a lot more players were able to get it. Alright, next let's talk about the top flying types. We of course have Mega Rayquaza at the very top, but then we have Mega Salamence. Now the reason why Mega Salamence is at the top of this list is because it recently received the move Fly. That ultimately makes it one of the best flying types in the game. And then of course that also includes Shadow Salamence, which is going to come in at number 3, and then at number 4 we have regular Rayquaza with Dragon Ascent. And then at number 5, we have Shadow Moltres, and then at number 6, we actually have Enamorus, which is a new Pokemon that was introduced this year. Alright, now let's move on to ghost types, and of course, at number 1, we have one of the newest additions to Pokemon GO, and that is Dawnwing's Necrozma. That Pokemon is, and something that I did predict when it was first released, the #1 ghost type in the game, and the reason for that is because of Moongeist Beam. That move is extremely powerful, and on top of that, this Pokemon has stats that are comparable to Mega Evolution, so it is a no-brainer. This is going to be the #1 ghost type in the game, and for the foreseeable future as well. But at number 2, we of course have Mega Gengar with Lick and Shadow Ball. That is of course the classic #1 ghost type in the game, but something you do need to keep in mind is that it is weak against Psychic type attacks, which typically, if you're going up against Psychic-type Pokemon, you would want to bring Ghost-type Pokemon, so that is something you should be aware of. Mega Gengar might be the best counter, but at the same time, it could get hard countered by the Pokemon you're going up against. And then at number 3, we have Mega Banette. That is a really good alternative to Mega Gengar. The only unfortunate problem is that Mega Banette deals a lot less damage compared to Mega Gengar. And then at number 4, we have Shadow Chandler. That is going to be a very powerful Shadow Pokemon with Ghost-type attacks. And then we have Shadow Gengar, and it has a lot of the same benefits as Mega Gengar. And then at number 6, we have Lunala with Shadow Ball. Alright, now let's move on to the top grass types, and again, I think this is pretty much unchanged from the previous list. We have Mega Sceptile at the very top. That is by far going to be the best grass type in the game. And then at number 2, we have Kartana, which is also very much the best grass type that's not a Mega Evolution. And then Mega Venusaur comes in at number 3. And then we have Shaman at number 4. This is specifically the Sky form. And then at number 5, we got Zarude. And then at number 6, we have Shadow Tangrowth. Alright, next let's move on to the ground types, and there are actually a couple of new Pokemon in this entry. We of course have Primal Groudon at the very top. That is going to be by far the absolute best ground type in much the same way as Mega Rayquaza. I don't think that's ever going to be changed. Like, it's always going to be Primal Groudon at the very top. And then at number 2, we actually have a new entry, and it's a Pokemon that was released this year, and that is going to be Shadow Groudon with Precipice Blades. Very powerful Pokemon, and if you have one, you need to invest into it. And then we got Mega Garchomp at number 3, and then Shadow Ursaluna at number 4. And this is a very interesting one because Shadow Teddiursa recently made a return to Pokémon GO, and a lot more players had access to it. So Shadow Teddiursa evolves into Shadow Ursaluna, which is going to be one of the best, if not the best, non-Mega ground type in the game. And then at number 5, we have another Shadow Pokemon, which was recently introduced, and that's going to be Shadow Garchomp. And then at number 6, we of course have Terrian form Landorus. That has always been a staple ground type in the game. Alright, next let's move on to ice types. We got, of course, Kyurem at the very top with Dragon Breath and Glaciate. Glaciate is a very powerful move for Kyurem, and is what makes it number 1. But at number 2, we have a Pokemon that's a little bit more accessible, and something that more players tend to go to when it comes to ice types, and that is going to be Shadow Mamoswine. And then at number 3, we got another Shadow Pokemon, which is going to be Shadow Weavile. And then at number 4, we have Baxcalibur, one of the newest pseudo-legendaries in the game. And then at number 5, we got Galarian Darmanitan with Ice-type attacks. And then at number 6, we got regular Mamoswine with Ice-type attacks. Now, something you may have noticed is that there's no Mega Evolutions on this list, and the reason for that is because we do not have that many powerful Ice-type Mega Evolutions. But if you were to bring one, I would bring Mega Glalie. That is going to be probably the only useful Mega Evolution with an Ice-type. Alright, next let's move on to normal types, and full disclaimer, you're probably never going to use any of these Pokemon. Something you do need to keep in mind is that when it comes to normal types, they're pretty much not useful in any aspect of Pokemon GO, outside of maybe defending gyms. But even then, you're only going with one of 3 Pokemon, which is Snorlax, Chansey, and Blissey. Those are the top 3 defenders, but out of all these normal types, yeah, if you ever need a normal type damage Pokemon, these are going to be your top 6. And essentially none of them are useful in any way, so yeah, let's just move right along. Alright, now let's move on to the top poison types, and this list is going to be somewhat similar to previous lists. We of course have Mega Gengar at the very top. It is a top DPS glass cannon in the game, and of course it does have access to poison types, and they all have a same type attack bonus. And then coming in at number 2, we of course have Shadow Gengar for much of the same reasons, and then at number 3 we have Mega Beedrill. And at number 4 we have Nihilego, which is going to be often considered the absolute best non-shadow and non-mega poison type in the game. And then we have Mega Venusaur at number 5. But at number 6, we actually have a brand new entry, and that's going to be Naganadel. This is a very new Pokemon, but it also is considered a top tier poison type. So if you have one that's good IVs, then you should invest into it. Alright, this brings us to the psychic types, and this is pretty much the exact same list as it was before. We have Shadow Mewtwo at the very top. By far, that is going to be the best psychic type in the game. And then we have Mega Alakazam coming in at number 2. And then at number 3, we have regular Mewtwo with Confusion and Psystrike. And then at number 4, we have Mega Latios with Zen Headbutt and Psychic. A lot of people tend to forget that both Latios and Latias actually have the Psychic typing outside of their Dragon typing, so they actually can be considered a top tier Psychic type. You just don't really ever think about it because there's so many good Psychic types in the game. And then at number 5, we have Mega Gardevoir, another Pokemon that actually has the Psychic typing. And then at number 6, we have Hoopa Unbound with Confusion and Psychic. Alright, now let's move on to the rock types, and this list is pretty much going to be the exact same as before. We have Mega Diancie at the very top. That is of course going to be the absolute best rock type in the game, but then we have Shadow Rampardos at number 2. And then at number 3, we have Mega Tyranitar with Smackdown and Stone Edge. And then at number 4, we have Shadow Rhyperior. And then number 5, we got Mega Aerodactyl. And then at number 6, we have Shadow Tyranitar with Smackdown and Stone Edge. Next up, let's go on to the Steel types, and at number 1, we have a brand new Pokemon that was recently introduced, and that is of course going to be Duskmane Necrozma. Duskmane Necrozma, as I stated, would be the number 1 Steel type in the game once it gets released. It even dethroned Shadow Metagross, which is pretty big. Speaking of which, that's going to be our second best Steel type in the game, which is going to be Shadow Metagross. And then at number 3, we of course have regular Metagross. And then at number 4, we have Shadow Excadrill with Steel type attacks. And at number 5, we have Melmetal with double Iron Bash. And then at number 6, finally, we have Jirachi. Now, the reason why this list feels a little bit contrived is because, well, there's not that many Steel types in the game that are really good. It really comes down to Duskmane Necrozma and Metagross. Those are your 2 best options. Everything else kind of pales in comparison. So, yeah, if you want really good Steel types, because there are certainly raid bosses that are weak against Steel types, you will want to invest in the top 3. Alright, and finally, let's move on to the very last type that we're going to be covering, and that is going to be Water types. And this is pretty much the exact same as before, with the exception of one new entry. At the very top, we of course have Primal Kyogre. For much of the same reasons as Mega Rayquaza and Primal Groudon, it is going to be the absolute best water type in the game, and it's going to continue to be for a very long time. But at number 2, we have the next best option, which is going to be Mega Swampert. And then at number 3, we have the brand new entry from this year, which is going to be Shadow Kyogre. That Pokemon is incredibly powerful, but it does cost quite a lot for you to invest in. So yeah, if you happen to have a good one, then it might be worth all the rare candies and rare candy XLs, but if you do not have a good one, then you're better off just investing into regular Kyogres. And then at number 4, we have Mega Blastoise, and at number 5, we have Mega Gyarados, and then at number 6, we have Shadow Swampert. This is your top 6 when it comes to water types, and I really do think this list is not going to change for a very long time. So there you have it. This was the top Pokemon of every single type. Yeah, this was quite a long video, but I really do think all the information in this video is quite important. Now I have to emphasize that this is not counting PvP, and a lot of these Pokemon are not necessarily the top DPS. It's really all about how useful they are, and really just how much they're balanced in terms of their stats and how powerful their charge attacks are. There's quite a lot of Pokemon out there that are going to be even higher than these Pokemon when it comes to DPS, and there's going to be some Pokemon that are going to be much better than these Pokemon when it comes to PvP. But we'll save those for another day, because when it comes to these Pokemon, I would make the argument that they are the most useful, and I think that's a lot more important than those other 2 factors. But yeah, in any case, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding this whole video down below. Is there a particular Pokemon that you felt like should have been included, but I did not do so? Make sure you mention what those Pokemon are, and yeah, let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. If you ended up enjoying it and found it to be informative, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that notification bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload Pokemon Go videos. And real quick, let me give a shout out to all my friends on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support the content of the channel, the absolute best way to do so is, of course, joining my Patreon. If you choose to do that, then you will get a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon Go friends list. So that means for stuff like remote raids and the friendship system, if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a very different way, you can do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. Make sure you go over there and give me a follow. And that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.